So, we have established that addictions spring from pain and from our dysfunctional attempts to escape that pain. Where does that hurt come from? Are some people more susceptible to religious addiction than others? And how can we tell when someone is a religious addict? What's the difference between faith and fanaticism? Healthy religiosity and addiction? And as we explore that full range of symptoms of religious addiction and discuss what types of people might be vulnerable to it, you're going to begin to answer some of these questions. So, like alcohol and other addictive substances, humankind has really unknowingly been using religion in an unhealthy way for thousands of years. So, religious addiction, it starts as almost this cultural bad habit. It's kind of like Jelinek's observation that alcoholism often begins with social drinking. So, to sum up the patterns, Eric Fromm, William James, and others have noted that religion has served several functions in our society to avoid error in order to escape punishment, to compensate for deprivations and suffering, to provide those rules for correct behavior, and to be perfect so that the rewards are guaranteed, and to maintain social control, often by the clergy or other people seeking power and to salve the consciences of those who abuse it. And it slides into addiction the more it's used as a nursing bottle to fix us. So, psychiatrist N.S. Xavier, in his book, The Two Faces of Religions, says that religious beliefs and practices become dysfunctional when they don't express healthy striving, but their attempts to ward off repressed impulses. And he also makes a very important observation that when an unhealthy belief or behavior is challenged, the result is excessive fear. And anybody who's ever tried to challenge a religious addict's belief system has undoubtedly been met with a hostility that borders on fury. People who are spiritually healthy are not going to react with fear and anger to questions about their beliefs and practices. So, one good test of whether or not you're addicted to something is to see how you feel when you try to not engage in it. If the result is anxiety, irritability, and moodiness, and the sense that those feelings are going to go away if you just have one of whatever it is, then you're probably addicted. So, if you react with indignation or anger to someone's questioning how much you drink or eat or go to church or how consumed you are with work or a significant other, that's going to be your warning sign of addiction. Healthy spirituality, in contrast, is very freeing. Differing beliefs or even outright opposition don't threaten you. The symptoms of religious addiction point to a narrow, restrictive belief system, and that limits your spiritual growth and victimizes you as well as the people around you. So, some of the symptoms of religious addiction can include an inability to think, doubt, or question information or authority. You have that black and white simplistic thinking, that shame-based belief that you just aren't good enough or you aren't doing it right, the magical thinking that God's going to fix you, that scrupulosity where it's rigid, obsessive adherence to the rules and the code of ethics or the guidelines. It's uncompromising judgmental attitudes. Then you have compulsive praying and going to church or crusades and quoting scripture. You also have unrealistic financial contributions. And you might even believe that sex is dirty or that our bodies and physical pleasures are evil. It's a compulsive overeating or excessive fasting, a conflict with science, the medicine, or education, a progressive detachment from the real world, isolation, or a breakdown of relationships, psychosomatic illnesses like sleeplessness and back pains and headaches and hypertension, even manipulating scripture or text and feeling chosen or claiming to receive special messages from God. It's a trance-like state of a religious high or wearing a glazed happy face. maybe a cry for help, either mental, emotional, or physical breakdown or hospitalization. So we know some people are going to be more vulnerable or at risk than others. And given our conditioning over the years to kind of look outside at outside authorities to tell us what to do, I kind of think we're all at risk. But there are some groups who are especially vulnerable. And the most vulnerable, of course, are those who grew up in those religiously addicted homes because all the symptoms that we just discussed they're gonna have been really ingrained in them. And then other adult children from dysfunction, especially those who have suffered physical or sexual abuse, are also really vulnerable to religious addiction. Because when you've been abused, the need to escape and be safe is just so overpowering. Sexual abuse survivors, in particular, try to cleanse their sense of feeling used and feeling dirty with religion. And the belief that sex and our bodies are dirty becomes sort of this explanation for the abuse. The magical thinking and the fantasy aspects of religion, the twin lures of escape and fix, are really powerfully attractive to those who have been sexually or physically abused. And the same is going to apply to the people who are suffering from sexual identity problems. Homosexuals, asexuals, or even people with severe body image problems. People with sexual dysfunction or sexual identity problems are frequently trying to cure themselves by turning to religion. And I'll even suggest that Jimmy Swaggart is an excellent example of a sexual addict who sought to cure his sexual addiction with religion. And we see a lot of homosexuals, they, they, they're fearful of the rejection by their families and societies, and they struggle to hide their sexual orientation in religion. And sadly, the guilt and the shaming messages most religions dispense about homosexuality only serve to increase the guilt and the shame and the torment. So often they're unable to seek help from a therapist, and some commit suicide as a direct result of their attempts to cure themselves with religion. Then adult children of dysfunction have a really great need to escape and to control their surroundings. They have grown up in these homes that were ruled by the don't talk, don't trust, and don't feel credo. And now it's recognized as a hallmark of dysfunctional families. But not questioning, the black and white thinking, and even the magical thinking are already second nature to them. And they fall prey to the escape or control mechanisms of that scrupulosity. And they may have already learned how to put on a happy face to hide their family's dysfunction. So they are primarily at risk. And then we can see how the idea of being rewarded, the need to atone, and the magical belief in a fixer are going to make the sick and the elderly an at-risk group for religious addiction. And these are the same prime targets of the TV evangelists who cold-heartedly and calculatedly push every guilt, shame, and fear button imaginable in order to get money from these people, because the elderly are so frequently abandoned by their families and just left to fend for themselves. Their loneliness and isolation often drive them to religious TV for comfort, and they're made to feel like part of a family again, like they matter. And in their loneliness, the idea of being able to be with loved ones in the hereafter becomes compelling, as does that need to make doubly sure that this happens. So they're the main target for these demanding and unrealistic financial contributions, and they're especially likely to engage in compulsive praying and crusading and proselytizing. The tragedy is that religious addiction victimizes not only the senior citizens, but their family and friends as well. Sometimes the strains can cause divorce or bankruptcy or permanent rifts in families that are torn apart by somebody's addiction to a TV evangelist. And some of these evangelists claim to be pro-family. And this also applies to the sick, particularly those with congenital birth defects or terminal illnesses, all the way down to degenerative diseases like people with multiple sclerosis. When God is presented as the universal fixer, it's easy to understand why a sick person could become a religious addict. So there was this young woman who, as her son was slowly dying of leukemia, she became religiously addicted in her desperation for him not to die. She sent so much money to churches and televangelists that she had no money left for her son's burial. And she had adopted a literal understanding of all the messages that she heard about how Jesus heals. And as her addiction progressed, she's truly believing that if she sent enough money and attended enough services and prayed hard enough, that her child would be healed. And his death left her bitter and angry at God, at the preachers, and most of all, at herself. As for the minorities and the young, if you're shamed and put down, oppressed, alienated, or discriminated against because of your age, your gender, your sexual orientation, or your ethnic background, you're likely to be attracted to the messages of escape and redemption that many religions teach. And if you feel powerless and victimized, hearing that God punishes sinners is going to give you hope that your oppressors are going to get theirs, if only in the next life. So, minority groups and the young are especially attracted to the fantasy, that magical thinking, and the feelings of control that are offered by religious addiction. Young people in particular are really vulnerable because of that sense of identity and belonging that's provided by religious involvement. The need for validation and the struggle for identity and acceptance that are a necessary part of growing up really make young people very vulnerable to a religious abuse and addiction. And sometimes it's the loneliness and the low self-esteem that drive them into religion. Other times it's rebellion, kind of like this "I'll show you" rejection of the parental values. They're seeking attention and respect in any way that they can get it. And this also applies to many of the minority groups. The sense of mission, the feelings of power and control, and of being included that come with belonging to a church or a cult is really attractive to both minorities and young people. Adolescents have one foot in childhood and the other in adulthood. They still have the child's black and white thinking and a need for structure with an adult need for choice. And religion gives them the chance to choose their structure, yet allows them to continue to think in terms of black or white. The dogmatic rightness of religion is going to validate them, and it gives them this feeling of power and control that they don't feel at home or at school. So lastly, people with other addictions are also at risk. So anybody who's looking for a fix is at risk of becoming religiously addicted, especially those who are trying to stop or cure another addiction. I've heard of many addicts who just switch to religion in order to stop drinking, stop starving, stop overeating, stop raging out of control, stop overspending. Some of them simply abandon a fundamentalist religion for some sort of new age belief system, and they take their addictive baggage with them. And most addicts are very compulsive people with, though many of these compulsive people, they don't become addicted to specific substances or behavior. People with compulsive personalities have certain traits that make them susceptible to the religious addiction. In the book The Boy Who Couldn't Stop Washing, Dr. Judith Rappaport describes somebody with a compulsive personality as a restrictive, undemonstrative person who is perfectionistic to a degree that demands that others submit to his or her way of doing things. A compulsive personality is often indecisive and excessively devoted to work to the exclusion of pleasure. And when pleasure is considered, it's something to be postponed and sometimes never even enjoyed. People with compulsive personalities tend to be excessively moralistic and judgmental of themselves and of others. And you can see how this kind of person would be vulnerable to religious addiction, especially to the scrupulosity, the black and white thinking, and the judgmentalness. This particular kind of person is very drawn to the rules and the rituals, again, from that need to be safe. to do it right. And religion offers that ultimate safety and assurance that they'll be perfect. No matter what the cause, the symptoms of religious addiction are the tangible signs of a deep-seated shame and a terrible sense of worthlessness and a desperate need to escape or fix that sense of having been born this blotch on existence.